Imagine yourself waking, not to the gentle chime of an alarm, but perhaps to the distant, unsettling crow of a raven perched ominously on the thatched roof nearby. Is it just a bird, or a messenger of ill fortune? The air itself feels thick, heavy with the damp chill of morning and the lingering scent of wood smoke, peat fires, and something less pleasant. The miasma of close-packed living, of unwashed bodies, and waste mingling in the muddy track outside your door. There's no flicking a switch for light, only the grey, uncertain dawn filtering through a small, perhaps unglazed window opening, or the flickering, greasy light of a tallow candle if you're fortunate enough to afford such a luxury and prudent enough to have guarded it against hungry rodents through the night. Every shadow seems to hold a potential meaning, every sound a possible portent. Hi, how lovely to find you here again. Sometimes I catch myself wondering where you're watching from. Could you be nearby? Is it still light here and dark where you are? So tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? These time zones drive me a little crazy. Well then, let's begin. I hope you enjoy the story, and maybe subscribe before you drift off to sleep. The world outside your rough-hewn door isn't just governed by the changing seasons, the demands of the harvest, or the decrees of the local lord. It's a landscape alive with unseen forces, spirits both benevolent and malevolent, lurking demons eager to exploit any weakness, and the watchful eyes of saints or capricious fey-folk dwelling in the woods and streams. Your very first conscious actions of the day are fraught with potential significance. Did you happen to put your left foot down first as you swung your legs out from under the scratchy woolen blanket? A potentially disastrous omen for the hours ahead, perhaps necessitating a quiet counter-ritual before you even break your fast. Did you hear a dog howl thrice in the pre-dawn gloom? An icy finger traces its way down your spine. Someone you know, near or far, might be nearing their end. This isn't an occasional worry, a fleeting thought easily dismissed. It's the constant, low hum beneath the surface of existence, an undercurrent of anxiety that shapes your perception of reality. You prepare for the day, such as it is. Water, drawn perhaps from a communal well, itself subject to elaborate blessings to ensure its purity and ward off contamination by witchcraft or ill-wishing neighbours, feels icy against your skin as you perform a cursory wash. The simple act of dressing involves choices laden with potential consequences far beyond mere appearance. Certain colours might be deemed unlucky today, perhaps due to a troubling dream or a recent local misfortune associated with that hue. Certain knots used to fasten your tunic or leggings might be forbidden, believed to inadvertently bind your luck or invite unwanted spiritual attention. Every garment is donned with a half-conscious prayer or muttered charm. As you finally step outside, bracing against the morning air, the world bombards you with signs demanding interpretation. The direction the wind blows, the specific shape of the clouds scudding across the often grey sky, the sudden startled flight of a flock of birds, all are scanned, mentally catalogued, interpreted according to a complex, unwritten lexicon of folk wisdom and fearful belief. A black cat darting across your path isn't a charmingly spooky encounter. It's a jolt of genuine fear, a potential brush with the demonic, or a sure sign that a witch or their familiar spirit is nearby and likely up to no good. Did you remember the specific charm tucked into your tunic today? Perhaps it's a small, oddly shaped stone found by the riverbank, a bent nail discovered on the road, or a crudely fashioned piece of iron. Anything believed potent enough to ward off the ever-present threat of the evil eye, that malevolent gaze capable of causing sickness, misfortune, or even death. This constant vigilance, this unending need to interpret every mundane event, every natural occurrence, is profoundly exhausting. It adds a thick layer of pervasive anxiety to lives already burdened by relentless physical labour, the constant threat of disease for which there are few effective cures, the unpredictability of weather affecting the crops that mean survival, and the often arbitrary violence of man. Forget meticulously planning your week or even your day. Simply navigating the next hour without inadvertently tripping over a bad omen or failing to perform a necessary minor ritual feels like a significant accomplishment. The line between accepted religious piety and deeply ingrained superstition is hopelessly blurred, often entirely invisible to you and your contemporaries. Fervent prayers to saints mingle seamlessly with folk remedies involving questionable ingredients and half-remembered pagan rites passed down through generations, all part of a desperate, multifaceted attempt to exert some small measure of control over a world that feels overwhelmingly chaotic, dangerous, and fundamentally hostile. The fear isn't abstract. It manifests in tangible ways, influencing critical decisions about when to plant or harvest, whether to undertake a necessary journey, whom to trust or avoid in the village, how to treat an illness, or even how to interact with your own family. And as the day unfolds, these beliefs will only deepen their grip, weaving themselves inextricably into the very fabric of your work, your social interactions, and your relentless attempts to simply survive until nightfall, fervently hoping the encroaching darkness doesn't bring with it even worse, unseen terrors. The weight of these unseen forces follows you as you begin your day's labor. Let's say your work lies in the fields, a common fate. Stepping onto the soil isn't just about preparing for planting or tending to crops. It's entering a domain teeming with its own set of rules dictated by superstition. You might instinctively scan the earth near your feet. Finding a horseshoe, especially one with nails still attached, could bring a jolt of hope, a powerful charm against bad luck and mischievous spirits, perhaps to be nailed above your doorway later. But tripping, especially over nothing apparent, sends a chill through you. Was it an unseen root, or did a spiteful earth sprite just try to bring you down? Did you stumble with your left foot? Even worse. You might pause, mutter a quick prayer or protective phrase learned from your grandmother. Perhaps even trace a sign in the dirt to appease whatever force you just disturbed. The tools you use, the heavy plough, the sharp scythe, are not just implements of work. They are objects that can carry or attract luck, good or bad. Perhaps your plough has a small carving on it, a symbol meant to encourage fertility in the soil, or maybe a specific type of wood was insisted upon for the handle, believed to be resistant to curses. Lending a tool might be done reluctantly, not just for fear of it being damaged, but for fear that the borrower's bad luck might somehow infect it, or that they might use it when the stars are unfavorably aligned, thus cursing the tool itself. And should a tool break unexpectedly? It's rarely seen as simple wear and tear. More likely, it's a sign of displeasure from the land, or perhaps witchcraft is suspected. Whose gaze lingered too long on your new axe yesterday? Did you fail to observe the proper ritual before starting work this morning? Look up at the sky. A sudden change in weather isn't just meteorology, it's communication. Dark clouds gathering too quickly might signal divine anger. A strange shape in the clouds, does it resemble a skull or perhaps a hand reaching down? Requires immediate interpretation and probably a discussion with neighbors later to compare notes and anxieties. And then there are the truly big signs. Imagine seeing a comet blaze across the night sky. Today, we see it as a celestial event, predictable, understandable. But for you, living under the constant shadow of superstition, it's a terrifying spectacle. Comets were almost universally seen as harbingers of disaster. Plague, famine, the death of a king, or the start of a brutal war. Its appearance would send waves of panic through the community, prompting fervent prayers, fasting, and perhaps even scapegoating of individuals deemed unlucky or somehow responsible. The natural world is a constant source of messages if you know how to read them. The behavior of animals is particularly significant. We mentioned the raven and the howling dog, but what about the magpie? Seeing a single magpie is often considered bad luck, one for sorrow. Seeing two, better, two for joy. The rhyme continues, assigning meaning to various numbers of these birds encountered. Hearing the first cuckoo of spring might bring joy, but its calls could also be counted to predict how many years you have left to live, or how long until you marry. a nerve-wracking moment of divination. Even insects aren't exempt. A spider spinning its web in your doorway might be a good omen for wealth, but finding one on your clothes could signal impending news, good or bad depending on the time of day or the spider's size and color. This constant decoding of the environment adds another layer of mental effort to your already demanding life, turning every bird call, every insect encountered, into a potential piece of a vast, often frightening puzzle. It wasn't just the natural world whispering warnings. Your interactions with other people are also tangled in a web of suspicion and ritual. Simply meeting someone on the road requires careful navigation. Do you know this person? If so, are they generally considered lucky or unlucky? Associating with someone deemed unlucky, perhaps someone whose crops consistently fail or whose family suffers frequent illness, could be seen as inviting misfortune upon yourself. You might subtly make a protective sign, crossing your fingers perhaps, or touching iron if you have any about your person, as you exchange greetings, and greetings themselves are not simple. Saying the wrong thing, or even saying the right thing in the wrong tone, could be interpreted as a veiled curse or ill-wishing. Complimenting someone's child or livestock too effusively, for example, might attract the dreaded evil eye. This wasn't necessarily seen as intentional malice. The belief was that envy, even unconscious envy expressed through praise, could project harmful energy. To counteract this, people might immediately spit or touch wood or offer a counter-compliment that somehow diminishes the original praise, all in an effort to deflect the potential harm of the evil eye. Imagine the constant, low-level social anxiety this creates, where even expressing admiration is fraught with peril. Then there's the threshold of your own home. The doorway is a liminal space, a transition point between the relative safety within and the dangers without. Crossing the threshold requires care. We mentioned nailing a horseshoe above it. Other charms might be hung there too. Bundles of specific herbs known for their protective qualities, like rowan or St. John's wort, or perhaps symbols carved into the doorframe itself. Entering a neighbour's house also has its protocols. You might wait to be invited in, and upon entering, perhaps murmur a blessing for the house and its inhabitants. Bringing certain items across a threshold might be forbidden on certain days or under certain circumstances. Perhaps bringing in eggs after dark was thought to invite snakes, or carrying a sharp tool might cut the luck of the house. Within the community, certain individuals are viewed with particular suspicion. The local midwife or healer, while essential, often walks a fine line. Her knowledge of herbs and remedies is valued, but if too many births go wrong, or if her cures fail too often, whispers of witchcraft might begin. The same applies to the blacksmith, whose command of fire and metal gives him a certain power, making him both respected and slightly feared. Anyone living alone, particularly an elderly woman, is vulnerable to accusations if misfortune strikes the village. Did the crops fail after she was seen muttering near the fields? Did a cow fall sick after she looked at it? Fear needs an outlet, and superstition provides easy targets. Even religious practices are deeply interwoven with these older beliefs. You attend church, you pray to God and the saints, but these Christian rituals often sit alongside, or are blended with, much older, possibly pagan-derived traditions. The local priest might officially condemn superstitious practices, but even he might participate in blessing the fields with holy water in a manner that feels suspiciously like an older fertility rite. Saints themselves are often appealed to in ways that echo the functions of older gods, specific saints for specific problems, invoked with specific prayers and offerings that border on magical formulae. Holy relics, fragments of bone or cloth supposedly belonging to a saint, are treated with immense reverence, believed to possess powerful protective or healing magic, not unlike the talismans and charms of folk belief. This blend isn't seen as contradictory by most. It's simply the way things are done, a multi-layered approach to seeking protection and favour from the powers that govern the world, both seen and unseen. The lines are blurred, and the fear of offending any power, divine or otherwise, encourages a better safe than sorry approach, layering Christian prayers on top of folk charms and ancient rituals. Let's consider some specific objects and actions that carry heavy superstitious weight in your daily life. Take salt, for instance. It's a valuable commodity, essential for preserving food, but spilling it is considered terribly unlucky. Why? Perhaps because it was costly and waste invited misfortune, or maybe its preservative qualities linked it to life and purity, making its loss symbolic. If you do spill salt, you must immediately counteract the bad luck, often by throwing a pinch of the spilled salt over your left shoulder. This action is thought to blind the devil or any evil spirits lurking there, waiting to capitalize on your misfortune. It's an automatic reflex, performed without thought, ingrained since childhood. Mirrors, though rare and expensive, are another source of anxiety. A mirror doesn't just reflect your image, it's believed to hold a fragment of your soul. Breaking one, therefore, isn't just a costly accident, it's a potential shattering of the soul, leading to 7 years of bad luck. The number 7 itself is significant, often linked to cycles of life and fortune. Where did this belief come from? Perhaps from ancient Roman ideas that life renewed itself every 7 years, and a damaged reflection meant a damaged future cycle. Regardless of origin, the fear is real. If a mirror breaks, elaborate rituals might be needed to mitigate the bad luck, perhaps gathering the shards carefully and burying them underground, or throwing them into running water to wash the misfortune away. Even seemingly harmless actions like yawning need to be managed carefully. An open mouth is seen as an invitation for spirits or demons to enter your body. Therefore, you instinctively cover your mouth when you yawn, not out of politeness as we might today, but out of genuine fear of spiritual invasion. Similarly, sneezing might require a blessing. Saying "God bless you," or a local equivalent, isn't just a courtesy, it's a protective charm against the possibility that the soul might be momentarily expelled during the sneeze, leaving the body vulnerable, or that the sneeze itself is caused by a troublesome spirit. Numbers hold immense power. 13 is almost universally feared, often associated with the Last Supper, Judas being the 13th guest. Having 13 people at a table is avoided at all costs. Certain days of the week, particularly Friday, might be considered unlucky for starting new ventures, journeys, or even getting married, again often linked to Christian tradition, the crucifixion occurring on a Friday. Conversely, other numbers, like 3 or 7, are often seen as holy or lucky, incorporated into prayers, rituals, and even the architecture of churches. Colours, too, have their meanings. Black is often associated with death, mourning, and bad luck, hence the fear of black cats. Red might be seen as protective against evil, perhaps linked to the power of blood or fire. Green can be tricky, sometimes associated with growth and fairies, themselves unpredictable beings. Other times considered unlucky, perhaps due to its association with decay or poison. These colour associations influence choices in clothing, decorations, and even the perceived omens of seeing certain coloured objects or animals. You navigate this complex, symbolic landscape daily, making constant, often unconscious, calculations based on these ingrained beliefs. The mental energy required is considerable, adding yet another burden to your existence. Illness is a constant fear, and its causes are rarely understood in purely physical terms. Sickness is often seen as the result of sin, divine punishment, witchcraft, or the intrusion of malevolent spirits. When you or a family member falls ill, the response is a mixture of practical care, often limited and based on folk knowledge, and intense superstitious ritual. Prayers are offered, yes, but specific charms might also be employed. Perhaps a particular stone is placed under the sick person's pillow, or water from a specific holy well is administered. Certain words or phrases might be chanted, believed to have the power to drive out the sickness-causing entity. The village healer, as mentioned, plays a crucial role here, but their methods are steeped in this blend of observation and superstition. They might prescribe herbal remedies, some of which might have genuine, if accidental, medicinal properties. But these are often combined with actions based purely on sympathetic magic, the idea that like affects like. For example, to cure jaundice, which causes yellowing of the skin, they might prescribe eating yellow foods or wearing yellow amulets. To draw out a fever, they might use cool compresses, but also perform rituals involving water or specific cooling herbs, believing they are magically combating the heat. Protection against illness and misfortune is a constant preoccupation. You likely carry some form of amulet or charm on your person at all times. This could be something simple, like a piece of iron, believed to repel fairies and witches, a hagstone, a stone with a natural hole through it, good for warding off nightmares and witches, or a pouch containing specific herbs or salt. These aren't just decorations. They are functional tools in your daily battle against unseen dangers. Religious medals, depicting saints known for protection, like St. Christopher for travelers or St. Roch against plague, serve a similar purpose, blending faith and folk protection seamlessly. Specific rituals are performed at key times to ensure protection or good fortune. Before embarking on a journey, you might perform a small ritual at your doorstep, perhaps asking for blessings or leaving a small offering. Planting seeds involves more than just digging and sowing. Specific prayers might be said. The phase of the moon considered crucial, and perhaps even symbolic offerings made to the earth to encourage fertility. Building a new house involves foundation rituals, perhaps burying charms or coins at the corners to ensure the structure's stability and the inhabitants' prosperity and safety from harm. Consider the nod fire or need fire. This was a ritual practiced in some parts of Europe, often during times of plague or cattle disease. All fires in the village would be extinguished. Then, a new fire would be kindled by friction, usually using wood, a difficult, laborious process. This pure fire was believed to have powerful protective properties. Cattle might be driven through its smoke, and embers carried to relight the hearths in every home, symbolically cleansing the community and warding off the disease. Imagine the atmosphere in the village during such an event, the darkness, the tension, the collective effort, and the desperate hope invested in this ancient practice, often performed despite official church disapproval. It highlights the depth of fear and the reliance on rituals believed to hold real power over life and death. Even the simple act of eating and drinking is governed by superstition. Sharing a meal is a communal activity, but one fraught with potential pitfalls. Accepting food or drink from someone suspected of ill will or someone considered unlucky is done with hesitation. You might subtly murmur a protective charm before taking the first bite or sip. Spilling wine or ale might be seen as an omen, its meaning depending on where and how it spills. Does it stain the table in a particular shape? Does it splash towards or away from someone? Certain foods are imbued with symbolic meaning. Bread, the staple of life, is treated with reverence. Dropping a loaf on the floor is unthinkable, a sign of disrespect that could invite famine. Before cutting a new loaf, you might make the sign of the cross on its underside with the knife, a gesture blending piety and a folk blessing for abundance. Finding a hole in the center of a loaf after baking could be interpreted as a coffin, an omen of death in the household. Eggs, symbols of fertility and new life, are also handled carefully. Finding 2 yolks in one egg might be lucky, predicting a wedding or twins, but oddly shaped or unusually small eggs could be seen as unnatural, possibly laid by a rooster, a cockatrice egg, and capable of hatching a monstrous creature. Herbs used in cooking often pull double duty, chosen not just for flavor, but for their supposed magical properties. Rosemary might be included for remembrance and protection, sage for wisdom and warding off evil. The way food is served can also matter. Passing food or drink counterclockwise around a table might be avoided, seen as going against the sun's path and therefore unlucky or even sinister. Seating arrangements themselves might be influenced by attempts to avoid placing unlucky individuals next to each other, or ensuring no one sits at the corner of the table if that's deemed unfortunate. Water sources, as mentioned, are critical and often protected by ritual. But what about the water itself? Finding something unusual in the well, a strange growth, an unexpected object, could lead to the water being declared unsafe, not because of potential contamination in the modern sense, but because of suspected witchcraft or spiritual interference. Brewing ale, a vital part of the diet and social life, is also subject to superstition. If a batch goes sour or fails to ferment properly, blame might fall not on the ingredients or process, but on a neighbour's curse, the wrong phase of the moon, or the brewer having been overlooked, given the evil eye, during a critical stage. Imagine a village feast or celebration. While a time for merriment, it's also a time when social tensions and superstitious fears can run high. Loud noises, music, and dancing might be partly intended to drive away evil spirits. Specific traditional foods served might have symbolic meanings tied to luck, fertility, or protection for the coming season. But amidst the revelry, you remain watchful. Did someone give you a strange look? Did you accidentally break a custom or forget a traditional gesture? The potential for social missteps to be interpreted through a superstitious lens is ever present, turning even moments of supposed joy into exercises in careful navigation and underlying anxiety. Every shared cup, every bite of food, carries not just sustenance, but a potential connection to the unseen forces you believe govern your world. As daylight fades, a different set of fears begins to creep in. Nightfall isn't just the end of the working day. It's the time when malevolent forces are believed to roam more freely. Securing your home for the night involves more than just barring the door. You might check that the protective charms are in place, perhaps adding a specific prayer or ritual to ward off creatures of the night, ghosts, demons, or the dreaded nightmare. Literally a spirit believed to press down on sleepers, causing bad dreams and suffocation. Getting ready for sleep is itself a ritual. You might carefully arrange your sleeping position, perhaps avoiding sleeping with your feet pointing towards the door, which could be seen as inviting death. Dreams are not just random thoughts, they are potent messages or visitations. A nightmare might be interpreted as a demonic attack, requiring prayers or specific charms placed under the pillow, like a hagstone or a knife, for protection on subsequent nights. Other dreams might be seen as prophecies or warnings. Did you dream of falling? A sign of misfortune? Did you dream of clear water? Perhaps good luck is coming. Interpreting dreams is a common topic of discussion, adding another layer of meaning and anxiety to the start of each day. The darkness outside is not empty. It's populated by unseen entities. The hoot of an owl might be just a bird, or it could be the call of a witch or a harbinger of death. Strange lights seen flickering in the distance, perhaps marsh gas or will-o'-the-wisp, are often interpreted as mischievous or deadly spirits trying to lure travelers to their doom. You avoid traveling at night if at all possible. If you must venture out, you do so with trepidation, perhaps carrying a lantern not just for light, but for its perceived protective qualities, and certainly armed with prayers and any charms you possess. Even within the home, the night holds dangers. The hearth, the center of the home during the day, needs careful tending before sleep. Letting the fire die out completely might be considered bad luck, inviting cold and darkness in a symbolic as well as literal sense. Banking the embers carefully to preserve them till morning is a practical necessity, but also carries a sense of maintaining the home's heart and protective warmth against the encroaching night. Sounds heard in the dead of night, a creaking floorboard, the wind rattling the shutters, the scuttling of unseen pests, are easily magnified by fear and interpreted through the lens of superstition. Is that just the house settling? Or is it a restless spirit? Was that the wind, or a demon trying to get in? Sleep itself might be fitful, punctuated by these anxieties and the need for constant vigilance, even in slumber. The relief that comes with the first light of dawn is palpable, not just because a new day of labor begins, but because the terrors of the night have, for now, receded. As daylight fades, a different set of fears begins to creep in. Nightfall isn't just the end of the working day. It's the time when malevolent forces are believed to roam more freely. Securing your home for the night involves more than just barring the door. You might check that the protective charms are in place, perhaps adding a specific prayer or ritual to ward off creatures of the night, ghosts, demons, or the dreaded nightmare. literally a spirit believed to press down on sleepers, causing bad dreams and suffocation. Getting ready for sleep is itself a ritual. You might carefully arrange your sleeping position, perhaps avoiding sleeping with your feet pointing towards the door, which could be seen as inviting death. Dreams are not just random thoughts, they are potent messages or visitations. A nightmare might be interpreted as a demonic attack, requiring prayers or specific charms placed under the pillow, like a hagstone or a knife, for protection on subsequent nights. Other dreams might be seen as prophecies or warnings. Did you dream of falling? A sign of misfortune? Did you dream of clear water? Perhaps good luck is coming. Interpreting dreams is a common topic of discussion, adding another layer of meaning and anxiety to the start of each day. The darkness outside is not empty. It's populated by unseen entities. The hoot of an owl might be just a bird, or it could be the call of a witch or a harbinger of death. Strange lights seen flickering in the distance, perhaps marsh gas or will-o'-the-wisp, are often interpreted as mischievous or deadly spirits trying to lure travelers to their doom. You avoid traveling at night if at all possible. If you must venture out, you do so with trepidation, perhaps carrying a lantern not just for light, but for its perceived protective qualities, and certainly armed with prayers and any charms you possess. Even within the home, the night holds dangers. The hearth, the center of the home during the day, needs careful tending before sleep. Letting the fire die out completely might be considered bad luck, inviting cold and darkness in a symbolic as well as literal sense. Banking the embers carefully to preserve them till morning is a practical necessity, but also carries a sense of maintaining the home's heart and protective warmth against the encroaching night. Sounds heard in the dead of night, a creaking floorboard, the wind rattling the shutters, the scuttling of unseen pests, are easily magnified by fear and interpreted through the lens of superstition. Is that just the house settling, or is it a restless spirit? Was that the wind, or a demon trying to get in? Sleep itself might be fitful, punctuated by these anxieties and the need for constant vigilance, even in slumber. The relief that comes with the first light of dawn is palpable, not just because a new day of labor begins, but because the terrors of the night have, for now, receded. The fear of witchcraft is a particularly dark thread running through this tapestry of superstition. While large-scale witch hunts became more prominent later, the underlying fear of malevolent magic practiced by neighbors was ever present in the Dark Ages and beyond. Any unexplained misfortune, sudden illness, livestock death, crop failure, a storm damaging property, could potentially be blamed on witchcraft. Accusations often arose from existing community tensions, grudges, or simple fear of the unusual. Imagine your neighbor, perhaps an elderly woman living alone, or someone known for being sharp-tongued or eccentric. If your cow suddenly stops giving milk shortly after she passed by, or if your child develops a fever after she gave them an odd look, suspicion might immediately fall on her. These suspicions fester, whispered among neighbors. People might start avoiding her, making protective signs when she approaches, or refusing to buy or trade goods with her. This social isolation could be devastating in a small, interdependent community. Proving witchcraft was incredibly difficult, often relying on flimsy evidence, hearsay, and superstitious tests. Perhaps the accused would be subjected to an ordeal, like being thrown into water. If she floated, she was guilty, rejected by the pure water. If she sank, she was innocent, but possibly drowned. Or perhaps witnesses would claim to have seen her consorting with animals, believed to be demonic familiars, or muttering curses. The discovery of unusual objects in her home, strange dolls, bundles of herbs, powders, could be presented as evidence of malevolent magic, even if they were simply folk remedies or personal charms. The accused often had little recourse. Denials might be dismissed, and torture could be used to extract confessions. Fear fueled the process. Fear of the witch's supposed power, fear of being associated with them, and perhaps even fear that failing to condemn a witch would bring divine wrath or further misfortune upon the community, while not yet the systematic persecution of later centuries. This undercurrent of fear and accusation, based on superstition, could ruin lives, break apart communities, and lead to tragic injustices, all born from the need to find explanations for the inexplicable and uncontrollable hardships of life. This constant suspicion also affects your own behavior. You strive to appear pious and conformist, avoiding any action that could be misinterpreted. You participate publicly in religious observances and community rituals. You are careful about your words, avoiding boasts that could attract envy or curses that might later be remembered if misfortune strikes the person you argued with. You try to maintain good relations with neighbors, not just for social harmony, but as a form of protection against potential accusations should things go wrong. Living under the shadow of potential witchcraft accusations adds yet another layer of stress and careful performance to your daily existence. The fear of witchcraft is a particularly dark thread running through this tapestry of superstition. While large-scale witch hunts became more prominent later, the underlying fear of malevolent magic practiced by neighbors was ever present in the Dark Ages and beyond. Any unexplained misfortune, sudden illness, livestock death, crop failure, a storm damaging property, could potentially be blamed on witchcraft. Accusations often arose from existing community tensions, grudges, or simple fear of the unusual. Imagine your neighbor, perhaps an elderly woman living alone, or someone known for being sharp-tongued or eccentric. If your cow suddenly stops giving milk shortly after she passed by, or if your child develops a fever after she gave them an odd look, suspicion might immediately fall on her. These suspicions fester, whispered among neighbors. People might start avoiding her, making protective signs when she approaches, or refusing to buy or trade goods with her. This social isolation could be devastating in a small, interdependent community. Proving witchcraft was incredibly difficult, often relying on flimsy evidence, hearsay, and superstitious tests. Perhaps the accused would be subjected to an ordeal, like being thrown into water. If she floated, she was guilty, rejected by the pure water. If she sank, she was innocent, but possibly drowned. Or perhaps witnesses would claim to have seen her consorting with animals, believed to be demonic familiars, or muttering curses. The discovery of unusual objects in her home, strange dolls, bundles of herbs, powders, could be presented as evidence of malevolent magic, even if they were simply folk remedies or personal charms. The accused often had little recourse. Denials might be dismissed, and torture could be used to extract confessions. Fear fueled the process. Fear of the witch's supposed power, fear of being associated with them, and perhaps even fear that failing to condemn a witch would bring divine wrath or further misfortune upon the community. While not yet the systematic persecution of later centuries, this undercurrent of fear and accusation based on superstition could ruin lives, break apart communities, and lead to tragic injustices, all born from the need to find explanations for the inexplicable and uncontrollable hardships of life. This constant suspicion also affects your own behavior. You strive to appear pious and conformist, avoiding any action that could be misinterpreted. You participate publicly in religious observances and community rituals. You are careful about your words, avoiding boasts that could attract envy or curses that might later be remembered if misfortune strikes the person you argued with. You try to maintain good relations with neighbors, not just for social harmony, but as a form of protection against potential accusations should things go wrong. Living under the shadow of potential witchcraft accusations adds yet another layer of stress and careful performance to your daily existence. Let's delve deeper into the specific objects you might carry or keep close, not for their practical use, but for their perceived power against the tide of misfortune. We mentioned iron, perhaps a simple bent nail picked up on the road, tucked into a pouch or sewn into the hem of your tunic. Why iron? The belief in its protective power is ancient and widespread. Perhaps it stems from its strength, its association with tools and weapons, or maybe its connection to fire during forging, seen as a purifying element. Fairies, witches, and evil spirits are widely believed to be repelled by iron. Touching iron might be an instinctive gesture when hearing bad news or feeling a sudden chill of fear. Stones, too, hold significance. Not just any stone, but specific types found in particular ways. The hagstone, or hold stone, we touched upon is highly valued. Finding one is considered lucky. You might wear it on a cord around your neck or hang it above your bed or in the stable to protect livestock from witchcraft or being hag-ridden, tormented by spirits in the night. Its power seems linked to the natural whole, perhaps representing a portal that traps or confuses evil, or a window allowing you to see through fairy glamour or witches' illusions. Certain crystals or semi-precious stones, though rarer for common folk, might also be valued. Amber, the fossilized tree resin, might be worn, perhaps believed to absorb negative energies or protect against illness. Jet, a black fossilized wood, was often used in mourning jewelry, but also carried as a protective amulet. Coral, especially red coral, was frequently given to children, tied to their cradles or worn as beads, believed to ward off the evil eye and promote health. These aren't just pretty trinkets. They are your personal armor against unseen threats. Herbs are another vital part of your protective arsenal. Bundles of specific dried herbs might hang from the rafters of your cottage or above doorways. Rowan, often associated with protection against witchcraft and enchantment, is a common choice. St. John's wort, gathered traditionally around Midsummer's Day, is believed to be particularly potent against evil spirits and melancholy. Sage, rosemary, dill, vervain, each has its own lore, its own specific protective or luck-bringing properties attributed to it through generations of folk belief. You might carry a small pouch containing a mix of these herbs, its scent a faint, constant reminder of the need for vigilance. Even parts of animals might be used. A rabbit's foot is perhaps one of the most well-known examples, considered a potent bringer of good luck, though the specific rituals for obtaining a truly lucky one could be quite elaborate and specific. Teeth, claws, or feathers from certain animals might also be carried, believed to impart the animal's strength, speed, or keen senses, or to offer protection associated with that creature. These objects form a personal collection of defenses, tangible items you cling to in the face of intangible fears, each one representing a small measure of hope against the perceived dangers surrounding you. Let's delve deeper into the specific objects you might carry or keep close, not for their practical use, but for their perceived power against the tide of misfortune. We mentioned iron, perhaps a simple bent nail picked up on the road, tucked into a pouch or sewn into the hem of your tunic. Why iron? The belief in its protective power is ancient and widespread. Perhaps it stems from its strength, its association with tools and weapons, or maybe its connection to fire during forging, seen as a purifying element. Fairies, witches, and evil spirits are widely believed to be repelled by iron. Touching iron might be an instinctive gesture when hearing bad news or feeling a sudden chill of fear. Stones, too, hold significance. Not just any stone, but specific types found in particular ways. The hagstone, or hold stone, we touched upon, is highly valued. Finding one is considered lucky. You might wear it on a cord around your neck or hang it above your bed or in the stable to protect livestock from witchcraft or being hag-ridden, tormented by spirits in the night. Its power seems linked to the natural whole, perhaps representing a portal that traps or confuses evil, or a window allowing you to see through fairy glamour or witches' illusions. Certain crystals or semi-precious stones, though rarer for common folk, might also be valued. Amber, the fossilized tree resin, might be worn, perhaps believed to absorb negative energies or protect against illness. Jet, a black fossilized wood, was often used in mourning jewelry, but also carried as a protective amulet. Coral, especially red coral, was frequently given to children, tied to their cradles or worn as beads, believed to ward off the evil eye and promote health. These aren't just pretty trinkets. They are your personal armor against unseen threats. Herbs are another vital part of your protective arsenal. Bundles of specific dried herbs might hang from the rafters of your cottage or above doorways. Rowan, often associated with protection against witchcraft and enchantment, is a common choice. St. John's wort, gathered traditionally around Midsummer's Day, is believed to be particularly potent against evil spirits and melancholy. Sage, rosemary, dill, vervain. Each has its own lore, its own specific protective or luck-bringing properties attributed to it through generations of folk belief. You might carry a small pouch containing a mix of these herbs. Its scent a faint, constant reminder of the need for vigilance. Even parts of animals might be used. A rabbit's foot is perhaps one of the most well-known examples, considered a potent bringer of good luck, though the specific rituals for obtaining a truly lucky one could be quite elaborate and specific. Teeth, claws, or feathers from certain animals might also be carried, believed to impart the animal's strength, speed, or keen senses, or to offer protection associated with that creature. These objects form a personal collection of defenses, tangible items you cling to in the face of intangible fears, each one representing a small measure of hope against the perceived dangers surrounding you. Let's delve deeper into the specific objects you might carry or keep close, not for their practical use, but for their perceived power against the tide of misfortune. We mentioned iron, perhaps a simple bent nail picked up on the road, tucked into a pouch or sewn into the hem of your tunic. Why iron? The belief in its protective power is ancient and widespread. Perhaps it stems from its strength, its association with tools and weapons, or maybe its connection to fire during forging, seen as a purifying element. Fairies, witches, and evil spirits are widely believed to be repelled by iron. Touching iron might be an instinctive gesture when hearing bad news or feeling a sudden chill of fear. Stones, too, hold significance. Not just any stone, but specific types found in particular ways. The hagstone, or hold stone, we touched upon, is highly valued. Finding one is considered lucky. You might wear it on a cord around your neck, or hang it above your bed, or in the stable to protect livestock from witchcraft, or being hag-ridden, tormented by spirits in the night. Its power seems linked to the natural whole, perhaps representing a portal that traps or confuses evil, or a window allowing you to see through fairy glamour or witches' illusions. Certain crystals or semi-precious stones, though rarer for common folk, might also be valued. Amber, the fossilized tree resin, might be worn, perhaps believed to absorb negative energies or protect against illness. Jet, a black fossilized wood, was often used in mourning jewelry, but also carried as a protective amulet. Coral, especially red coral, was frequently given to children, tied to their cradles or worn as beads, believed to ward off the evil eye and promote health. These aren't just pretty trinkets. They are your personal armor against unseen threats. Herbs are another vital part of your protective arsenal. Bundles of specific dried herbs might hang from the rafters of your cottage or above doorways. Rowan, often associated with protection against witchcraft and enchantment, is a common choice. St. John's wort, gathered traditionally around Midsummer's Day, is believed to be particularly potent against evil spirits and melancholy. Sage, rosemary, dill, vervain, each has its own lore, its own specific protective or luck-bringing properties attributed to it through generations of folk belief. You might carry a small pouch containing a mix of these herbs. Its scent a faint, constant reminder of the need for vigilance. Even parts of animals might be used. A rabbit's foot is perhaps one of the most well-known examples, considered a potent bringer of good luck, though the specific rituals for obtaining a truly lucky one could be quite elaborate and specific. Teeth, claws, or feathers from certain animals might also be carried, believed to impart the animal's strength, speed, or keen senses, or to offer protection associated with that creature. These objects form a personal collection of defenses, tangible items you cling to in the face of intangible fears, each one representing a small measure of hope against the perceived dangers surrounding you. Animals are not just creatures sharing your world. They are messengers, symbols, and sometimes even agents of the supernatural. Their behavior is constantly observed and interpreted for hidden meanings. We've touched on birds like ravens, magpies, and cuckoos, but the list is much longer. The robin, often seen as a friendly bird, might still carry omens depending on where it perches or sings. Swallows nesting in the eaves of your house are generally considered very lucky, bringing protection and prosperity. Harming them or their nests would invite severe misfortune. Domestic animals are also central to these beliefs. Cats, particularly black cats, walk a fine line. While sometimes kept for pest control, they are heavily associated with witches and the devil. A black cat crossing your path is almost universally unlucky. Yet, in some traditions, having a black cat in the house might be considered lucky, perhaps absorbing ill fortune intended for the family. Their perceived connection to the supernatural makes them objects of both fear and cautious respect. Dogs, while companions and protectors, also feature in superstition. Their howling, especially at night, is often interpreted as an omen of death. Certain breeds might be considered luckier than others. A dog behaving strangely, refusing food, whining without cause, staring intently at nothing, could be seen as sensing spirits or impending doom, putting the household on edge. Livestock, being essential for survival, are surrounded by protective rituals and beliefs. We mentioned hanging charms in stables. Sudden illness or death among cattle, sheep, or pigs is rarely attributed to natural causes alone. Witchcraft or curses are often the first suspicion. Specific herbs might be fed to animals for protection, or water from holy wells used to sprinkle them. The evil eye is a constant concern. Neighbors known for envy might be subtly discouraged from looking too closely at your prize cow or flock of sheep. Wild animals encountered also carry potent symbolism. Seeing a hare, especially one crossing your path, could be very unlucky, often associated with witches who were believed to be able to transform into hares. Deer might be seen more positively, perhaps symbols of grace or solitude. But startling one could still be interpreted based on the circumstances. Foxes are often seen as cunning tricksters. Their appearance potentially signaling deceit or cleverness is needed. Even insects like bees hold significance. A bee flying into the house might be a lucky omen or predict a visitor, while a swarm settling on your property could have various interpretations, often linked to future prosperity or important news. This constant reading of animal behavior turns the natural world into a living oracle, demanding your attention and interpretation at every turn. The human body itself is a constant source of omens and interpretations. Involuntary actions, aches, and even itches are rarely dismissed as mere physical quirks. They are potential messages from the unseen world or indicators of future events. An itching palm, for example, is a widely known superstition. Witch palm? That often depends on local tradition. An itchy right palm might mean money is coming your way, while an itchy left palm could mean you'll soon be paying money out, or vice versa. An itchy nose might predict a visitor, an argument, or that someone is talking about you. An itchy foot could mean you're about to embark on a journey. Your ears too can provide clues. A ringing or burning sensation in your ears might mean someone is talking about you. Again, the specific ear matters. The right ear might mean they're speaking well of you. The left ear, ill. Hiccups might be seen as a sign that you're being thought of, or sometimes as a minor form of spiritual interference, perhaps requiring a specific folk remedy, like holding your breath or drinking water in a particular way, not just to stop the physical spasm, but to break the unwanted connection or influence. Shivers or sudden chills running down your spine for no apparent reason, not related to cold, are often interpreted as someone walking over your future gravesite, a rather unsettling thought. Or it could simply mean a spirit just passed close by. Eye twitches can also be laden with meaning, depending on which eye and even which part of the eyelid is twitching, predicting tears, laughter, visitors, or news. Even the way your hair grows or minor blemishes can be interpreted. A cowlick, a tuft of hair growing in a different direction, might be seen as a mark of stubbornness or luck. Moles on different parts of the body were sometimes thought to indicate personality traits or future fortune, part of a folk physiognomy. Freckles might be seen as lucky, or sometimes associated with fairies. These beliefs turn your own body into another text to be constantly read and decoded. A random itch isn't just an itch, it's a potential forecast. A shiver isn't just a physiological response, it's a brush with the supernatural. This adds another layer of self-monitoring and interpretation to your daily life, ensuring that the world of signs and omens follows you even into the privacy of your own skin. It reinforces the idea that you are constantly connected to and influenced by forces beyond the purely physical, making your very body a part of the superstitious landscape you inhabit. The human body itself is a constant source of omens and interpretations. Involuntary actions, aches, and even itches are rarely dismissed as mere physical quirks. They are potential messages from the unseen world or indicators of future events. An itching palm, for example, is a widely known superstition. Which palm? That often depends on local tradition. An itchy right palm might mean money is coming your way, while an itchy left palm could mean you'll soon be paying money out, or vice versa. An itchy nose might predict a visitor, an argument, or that someone is talking about you. An itchy foot could mean you're about to embark on a journey. Your ears too can provide clues. A ringing or burning sensation in your ears might mean someone is talking about you. Again, the specific ear matters. The right ear might mean they're speaking well of you. The left ear, ill. Hiccups might be seen as a sign that you're being thought of, or sometimes as a minor form of spiritual interference, perhaps requiring a specific folk remedy, like holding your breath or drinking water in a particular way, not just to stop the physical spasm, but to break the unwanted connection or influence. Shivers or sudden chills running down your spine for no apparent reason, not related to cold, are often interpreted as someone walking over your future gravesite, a rather unsettling thought. Or it could simply mean a spirit just passed close by. Eye twitches can also be laden with meaning, depending on which eye and even which part of the eyelid is twitching, predicting tears, laughter, visitors, or news. Even the way your hair grows, or minor blemishes, can be interpreted. A cowlick, a tuft of hair growing in a different direction, might be seen as a mark of stubbornness or luck. Moles on different parts of the body were sometimes thought to indicate personality traits or future fortune, part of a folk physiognomy. Freckles might be seen as lucky, or sometimes associated with fairies. These beliefs turn your own body into another text to be constantly read and decoded. A random itch isn't just an itch, it's a potential forecast. A shiver isn't just a physiological response, it's a brush with the supernatural. This adds another layer of self-monitoring and interpretation to your daily life, ensuring that the world of signs and omens follows you even into the privacy of your own skin. It reinforces the idea that you are constantly connected to and influenced by forces beyond the purely physical, making your very body a part of the superstitious landscape you inhabit. Consider the tools of your trade beyond the farm implements we touched on earlier. If you are a craftsman, say a carpenter, a weaver, or a potter, your tools are not just extensions of your hands. They are partners in your work, subject to their own luck, and requiring careful handling based on superstition. A carpenter might avoid starting a major project on an unlucky day, like a Friday, fearing the wood might split, the joints might not hold, or the finished piece might bring misfortune to its owner. Dropping a tool might be seen as an omen, its significance depending on how it falls or what it points towards. Weavers might have beliefs surrounding their looms. Perhaps certain threads or colours are considered unlucky if used first thing in the morning. Breaking a thread might be more than an annoyance. It could signal a disruption in the household or bad news coming. Spiders, often found near looms, might be treated with cautious respect. Killing one could be unlucky, as they are fellow weavers, perhaps even possessing magical knowledge. The patterns woven might themselves incorporate symbols intended for protection or good fortune, subtly embedded within the design. Potters, working with earth and fire, operate in a realm rich with transformative symbolism. The kiln firing is a critical, tense time. A batch of pots cracking or exploding in the kiln is a disaster, and blame might easily fall on witchcraft, the evil eye, or failure to observe the proper rituals before firing. Perhaps specific prayers are said, or charms placed near the kiln for protection. The clay itself might be sourced from particular locations believed to be luckier or purer than others. Glazes might incorporate materials chosen not just for color, but for perceived protective properties. Even merchants and traders have their superstitions. The first customer of the day might be significant. If they haggle too hard or are perceived as unlucky, it could set a negative tone for the day's business. Receiving payment might involve rituals, like spitting on the first coin received or keeping a specific lucky coin in the till. Certain routes might be avoided, not just for physical dangers like bandits, but because they pass through areas deemed unlucky or haunted. Making deals or contracts might involve specific oaths or gestures intended to bind the agreement, not just legally, but magically, ensuring honesty and warding off misfortune related to the transaction. Across many trades, there's a reluctance to work after dark, partly due to poor light, but also because night is seen as the time for spirits and mischief, not productive labor. Finishing a piece of work completely before nightfall might be considered important to avoid leaving it vulnerable overnight. These beliefs add another layer of complexity and potential anxiety to the already demanding process of earning a living. Tying your success not just to skill and effort, but to the careful navigation of unseen forces and adherence to traditional, superstitious practices. Even leisure activities, the rare moments of respite from labor, are not free from the influence of superstition. Games of chance, like dice or rudimentary card games, are particularly fraught. While enjoyed, they are seen as directly invoking Dame Fortuna, the goddess of luck. Winning or losing isn't just about skill or random chance. It's seen as a reflection of your current standing with fate. A string of bad luck might lead you to suspect you've somehow offended fortune, or that an opponent is using subtle witchcraft or cheating aided by charms. You might carry a lucky charm specifically for gambling, perhaps a special coin, a particular stone, or even a bone from a certain animal. Before rolling dice, you might perform a small ritual, blowing on them, shaking them a specific number of times, or muttering a phrase intended to attract good luck. The numbers that come up are scrutinized not just for their game value, but for potential omens. Rolling a particularly unlucky combination repeatedly could be seen as a warning to stop playing, or even a sign of impending misfortune in other areas of your life. Physical games and sports, too, might have superstitious elements. Before a wrestling match or a village football game, often a chaotic and violent affair, participants might employ charms for strength or protection against injury. Certain actions during the game might be considered lucky or unlucky. Scoring the first goal or being the first to fall could be interpreted as an omen for the outcome or even for events unrelated to the game. Music and dancing, common features of festivals and celebrations, also intersect with belief. Certain tunes might be considered lucky, others potentially dangerous if played at the wrong time or place, perhaps believed to attract unwanted spirits. Dances might follow specific patterns, sometimes rooted in older rituals intended to promote fertility, ward off evil, or mark the changing seasons. Participating enthusiastically might be seen as important not just for social cohesion, but for ensuring the efficacy of the ritual aspect of the celebration. Storytelling around the fire is another form of entertainment, but the stories often reinforce superstitious beliefs. Tales of ghosts, fairies, witches, saints' miracles, and monstrous beasts are popular, serving not just as entertainment, but as cautionary tales, reinforcing the community's understanding of the supernatural world and the rules for navigating it safely. Listening to these stories reinforces your own fears and beliefs, making the world outside the firelight seem even more populated by unseen forces. Leisure, then, is rarely just simple fun. It's another arena where you must be mindful of luck, omens, and the potential influence of the supernatural. How do you learn all these complex rules, interpretations, and rituals? Mostly through observation and oral tradition. From your earliest childhood, you watch your parents, elders, and neighbours. You see them pause before crossing a threshold, mutter charms under their breath, avoid certain paths, or react with fear or reverence to specific events or creatures. You absorb these behaviours unconsciously, long before you understand the reasons behind them. Stories, songs, and rhymes play a crucial role. We mentioned storytelling sessions, but even simple lullabies or children's rhymes might contain fragments of ancient beliefs or warnings about supernatural dangers. Proverbs and common sayings often encapsulate superstitious wisdom. Red sky at night, shepherd's delight. Red sky in morning, shepherd's warning is a well-known example that blends weather observation with predictive belief. These are repeated so often, they become ingrained truths. The elders in the community are repositories of this knowledge. Grandmothers, in particular, often pass down folk remedies, protective charms, and interpretations of omens learned over a lifetime. Their authority in these matters is often respected, even if the local priest occasionally preaches against such pagan notions. Failure to heed their advice might be seen as foolish or deliberately courting disaster. Community pressure also reinforces these beliefs. If everyone else in the village avoids a certain well after dark, or believes that spilling salt requires throwing it over your shoulder, it's difficult and socially isolating to act differently. Mockery, suspicion, or outright ostracism can face those who openly flout common superstitions. Conforming isn't just about belief, it's about belonging and maintaining social harmony, however fear-based that harmony might be. This constant reinforcement, from childhood observation to adult social pressure, makes the superstitious worldview feel utterly natural and inescapable. It's not a set of quirky beliefs you can choose to ignore. It's the very lens through which you perceive and interact with reality. Questioning it would be like questioning whether the sun will rise, unthinkable for most, and potentially dangerous for those few who might dare. So picture yourself living within this framework. Every day is a tightrope walk over a chasm of potential misfortune. Every choice, no matter how small, is weighed not just for its practical outcome, but for its superstitious significance. Every encounter, every natural event, every bodily sensation is scanned for meaning, for portents of good or ill. The world is not a neutral place. It is alive with forces, intentions, and hidden rules that must be constantly appeased and navigated. This isn't just about isolated beliefs. A fear of black cats here, a lucky horseshoe there. It's a comprehensive worldview, an operating system for reality that dictates behavior and shapes perception at every level. It provides explanations, however frightening, for things that are otherwise inexplicable. Sudden storms, devastating plagues, crippling illnesses, the sheer unfairness of life and death. In a world with limited scientific understanding and control over nature, superstition offers a set of tools, rituals, and explanations that provide a semblance of order and the possibility of influencing fate. But the cost is high. The constant vigilance, the underlying anxiety, the suspicion directed towards neighbours, the fear of inadvertently transgressing an unwritten rule. It all creates a significant mental and emotional burden. It can stifle innovation, as new methods might be seen as disrupting traditional, magically sanctioned ways. It can lead to tragic injustice, as misfortune is blamed on innocent scapegoats accused of witchcraft. It fosters a sense of powerlessness before fate, even while offering rituals that promise control. Imagine the relief, the sheer mental space that opens up when you don't have to interpret the cawing of a raven or the direction of the wind as a personal message. Think of the freedom from the constant low-level fear that a misspoken word or an accidental spill could bring ruin upon your household. While life in later centuries certainly held its own dangers and anxieties, the gradual fading of this intensely pervasive, moment-to-moment superstitious dread marks a profound shift in how humans experience their daily existence. As we leave you now, drifting back from that dimly lit world, saturated with omens and rituals, perhaps carry with you a sense of that weight, that constant, exhausting vigilance. It's a reminder of how different the mental landscape could be, how profoundly fear and the need for explanation could shape every aspect of life, turning the mundane into the magical and the magical into a source of perpetual gnawing unease. Sleep well, free from the need to check for omens in the shadows. Let's consider how this pervasive web of superstition intertwines with the rudimentary systems of justice and social order that exist in your time. When disputes arise or crimes are committed, establishing guilt or innocence isn't always a matter of evidence in the way we might understand it. Often, it involves appealing directly to the supernatural, asking God or the unseen forces to reveal the truth through signs or trials. Imagine being accused of theft. Perhaps a neighbor claims you stole grain from their storage. Witnesses might be few or unreliable, and your word against theirs may not be enough, especially if they are more influential or generally considered luckier than you. In such cases, the community, or even the local lord or church authority, might resort to trial by ordeal. There are several forms this might take, each terrifying in its implications. One common method is trial by hot iron. You might be required to carry a piece of red-hot iron for a set distance, perhaps 9 paces. Your burned hand would then be bound and left for a specific period, usually 3 days. Afterwards, the bandage is removed in the presence of witnesses, often including a priest. If the wound is healing cleanly, without festering or excessive pus, it's taken as a sign from God that you are innocent. The divine has intervened to protect you. But if the wound is infected, blistered, and angry-looking, a very likely outcome given the lack of antiseptic practices, it's seen as proof of your guilt. God has withheld his healing grace, revealing your sin. The physical agony is immense, but the terror lies in the belief that your fate rests not on human judgment, but on a direct and potentially damning sign from the heavens, interpreted through the state of your injured flesh. Alternatively, you might face trial by hot water. This involves plunging your arm, perhaps up to the elbow, into a cauldron of boiling water to retrieve an object, like a stone or a ring. Again, your scalded arm is bound and examined after 3 days. Clean healing means innocence. Festering means guilt. The logic is the same. Divine judgment revealed through the body's reaction. Or consider trial by cold water, which we touched upon in the context of witchcraft accusations, but was used for other crimes too. You would be bound, often thumb to opposite toe, and thrown into a body of water that had likely been blessed by a priest. If you sink, the pure water has accepted you, signifying your innocence, though you might drown if not pulled out quickly enough. If you float, the holy water has rejected you, revealing your guilt. The irony is cruel. Survival might mean condemnation. These ordeals aren't seen merely as tests of endurance. They are solemn religious ceremonies, prayers made manifest through physical trial. Priests often officiate, prayers are said, fasting might precede the event, and the whole community might gather to witness God's judgment. The belief is that God will intervene, that these trials force a divine revelation. For you, facing such a trial, the fear must be overwhelming. Your innocence might be absolute, yet you know that the natural course of healing for a severe burn or the simple physics of buoyancy could easily condemn you. You pray desperately, not just for vindication, but for a miracle, for God to suspend the natural laws on your behalf. The outcome reinforces the belief system. If you are judged guilty, it confirms God's judgment and perhaps the community's suspicions. If innocent, it's a miracle, further proof of divine power and the efficacy of the ordeal itself. Justice is thus outsourced to the supernatural, a terrifying prospect where guilt or innocence hangs on the unpredictable behavior of fire, water, and wounded flesh, all interpreted through the unwavering lens of faith and superstition. Another form of seeking supernatural judgment, distinct from the ordeal imposed by authority, is the judicial duel or trial by combat. This isn't necessarily about determining guilt for a crime, but often about settling disputes over land, honor, or accusations where clear proof is lacking. Imagine you are in a bitter dispute with a neighbor over the boundary between your meager plots of land. Perhaps you both claim ownership of a particularly fertile strip or a valuable tree. If mediation fails, and witnesses contradict each other, one party might challenge the other to a duel, believing that God will grant victory to the one whose cause is just. This isn't usually a fight to the death between knights in shining armor, as romantic tales might suggest. For common folk like yourself, it could be a brutal, clumsy affair fought with simpler weapons, perhaps staffs, clubs, or shields specifically designated for such duels. The rules might be set by local custom or the presiding authority, like the lord of the manor. The fight takes place publicly, often in a designated field, with the community watching intently. It's a spectacle, but also a deeply serious appeal to divine arbitration. You prepare for the duel not just by practicing with your weapon, but through prayer, fasting, and perhaps seeking blessings or protective charms. You might attend Mass beforehand, fervently praying for God to strengthen your arm and guide your blows. Your opponent is doing the same. The belief is absolute. God will not allow the righteous to be defeated by the unjust in such a formal appeal to his judgment. Victory isn't just about superior strength or skill, it's a divine verdict. Imagine the scene, the circle of tense onlookers, the rough ground underfoot, the weight of the crude weapon in your hand, the fear mixed with righteous conviction. Your opponent stands before you, equally determined, equally convinced of their own rightness and divine favor. The signal is given, and the fight begins. It might be short and brutal, or a long, exhausting struggle. Injuries are common and sometimes fatal, even if death wasn't the intended outcome. The crowd watches, interpreting every blow, every stumble, as potential signs of divine favor shifting. If you emerge victorious, your claim is vindicated. God has shown his favor. Your opponent, if they survive, is not only defeated physically, but also judged in the eyes of God and the community. Their claim is dismissed, their honor perhaps stained. If you are defeated, however, the consequences are dire. Your claim is lost, your honor questioned, and you might face penalties or fines in addition to your injuries. Worse, you carry the spiritual weight of knowing, according to the prevailing belief, that God himself judged against you. There's no appeal to a higher court, only the grim acceptance of the divine verdict, delivered through force of arms. Trial by combat highlights the deep integration of violence, justice, and superstition. It reflects a worldview where physical prowess can be seen as a direct indicator of moral or legal rightness, precisely because God is expected to intervene on the side of the just. It's a system where disputes are resolved not necessarily by reason or evidence, but by a divinely sanctioned fight, turning legal conflict into a potentially lethal gamble on faith and brute force, all under the watchful, judging eyes of the community and the heavens. Beyond formal trials, superstition heavily influences how oaths and promises are made and regarded. In a time before widespread literacy and complex legal documents, a person's word, especially when sworn under oath, carries immense weight. But it's not just the social consequence of breaking an oath that concerns you. It's the supernatural danger. Swearing an oath isn't merely a promise made between people. It's often a vow made in the presence of God, the saints, or other unseen powers, calling upon them to witness and, crucially, to punish any falsehood. Imagine needing to make a solemn promise, perhaps swearing loyalty to a new lord, promising to repay a debt, or affirming the truth of your testimony. You might be required to swear upon a holy object, typically a religious relic. This could be a fragment of bone or cloth, believed to belong to a saint, housed in a special container, or perhaps a sacred book like the Gospels. Placing your hand upon such an object while speaking your oath is believed to make the vow incredibly binding. The relic isn't just a symbol, it's seen as possessing tangible power, a direct line to the holy figure. To swear falsely upon it is considered not just perjury, but blasphemy, inviting swift and terrible divine retribution, perhaps sudden illness, misfortune, or even eternal damnation. The fear surrounding false oaths is palpable. Before swearing, you might engage in rituals of purification, like fasting or prayer, to ensure your heart is clean and your words true. The act of swearing itself is performed with gravity and often fear. You choose your words carefully, knowing that any ambiguity could be exploited by mischievous spirits or interpreted negatively by the divine powers you've invoked. The witnesses aren't just human. God and the saints are listening, and their judgment is far more terrifying than any earthly penalty. This belief extends even to less formal promises. Making a vow lightly or breaking a simple promise made to a neighbor might still be seen as inviting bad luck. There's a sense that words themselves have power, and that sending false words out into the world can disrupt the natural order or attract negative attention from unseen forces. Keeping your word isn't just a matter of honor. It's a way of maintaining spiritual safety. Conversely, you might use oaths or specific phrases believed to have protective power. Swearing by Saint George or invoking the name of a patron saint might be done not just for emphasis, but as a form of minor charm, seeking the saint's protection or adding weight to your statement. Certain verbal formulas might be used to ward off evil when discussing dangerous topics or making plans, a way of verbally sealing the conversation against ill fortune. The power attributed to sworn words also means that curses are taken very seriously. A curse isn't just an expression of anger. It's believed to be a potent invocation of harm, capable of causing real misfortune if uttered with sufficient malice or under the right circumstances. You fear being cursed by an enemy, and you are careful not to utter curses yourself, lest they rebound or bring spiritual danger upon your own soul. If you believe you have been cursed, you might seek countercharms, blessings from a priest, or specific rituals to break the malevolent influence. The air itself seems thick with the potential power of words, making every promise, oath, and even angry outburst a potentially significant event in the ongoing struggle against misfortune and unseen malice. Let's explore the darker side of verbal superstition, the curse. As we touched upon, a curse isn't just angry words. It's perceived as a directed force, an attempt to inflict harm through supernatural means. The fear of being cursed is pervasive and can shape your interactions significantly. You might go out of your way to avoid offending someone known for their sharp tongue or perceived connection to occult knowledge, fearing they might utter a curse against you or your family. This fear can lead to appeasement behaviors, perhaps offering gifts or services to potentially dangerous individuals simply to stay on their good side. What forms might these curses take? They could be specific, wishing a particular misfortune upon someone. May your cows run dry. May your bread never rise. May your journey be plagued by storms. Or they could be more general, wishing ill luck or sickness upon a person or household. The power of the curse is often thought to depend on the malice and intent of the curser, and sometimes on specific rituals performed while uttering the words. Perhaps the curser stares intently at the victim, linking to the evil eye, or uses a particular gesture, or even incorporates sympathetic magic, like tying knots in a cord while speaking the curse, symbolically binding the victim's luck. Discovering you've been cursed, or merely suspecting it after a string of misfortunes, prompts immediate action. You wouldn't simply dismiss it as bad luck. Your first step might be to seek protection through conventional religious means, praying fervently, attending Mass, seeking a blessing from the priest, or making offerings to specific saints known for protection against evil. Holy water might be sprinkled around your home, on your family, and on your livestock. Religious medals or crucifixes might be worn with renewed diligence. But often, these measures are combined with folk remedies and counter-magic, reflecting that blurred line between official religion and ingrained superstition. You might consult a local wise woman or cunning man, the very same people sometimes feared as witches, but also sought out for their knowledge of counter-curses. They might offer specific charms to wear or hang in your home, perhaps made from herbs like rowan or iron objects. They might prescribe rituals to perform, such as burying a specific object at your threshold, or washing yourself or your belongings with water infused with protective herbs. Sometimes, the counter-ritual involves trying to identify the curser and turn the curse back upon them. This could involve complex procedures, like boiling specific ingredients, sometimes including unpleasant things like urine or nail clippings, in a pot while reciting certain words, believing this will cause the witch or curser physical pain and force them to lift the curse. Or perhaps creating a witch bottle, a container filled with sharp objects, urine, and other items, then buried or hidden, intended to trap or injure the source of the malevolent magic. Imagine the psychological toll: a series of unfortunate events, a sick child, a poor harvest, a tool breaking, is not just hardship, it's potential evidence of a hidden enemy actively working magic against you. This breeds suspicion within the community. Who have you argued with recently? Who looked at you strangely? Who might envy your meager possessions? The search for the source of the curse can turn neighbor against neighbor, feeding paranoia and potentially leading to false accusations and social conflict. The belief in curses creates a world where misfortune is rarely random, but often attributed to deliberate, hidden malice, making the already difficult task of survival even more fraught with anxiety and suspicion. The calendar itself is not just a way of marking time. It's a landscape of lucky and unlucky days, potent moments, and periods requiring special caution or specific rituals. The passage of seasons, the cycle of the week, and even specific dates are imbued with superstitious significance that dictates activities and influences behavior. We already mentioned Friday as often being considered unlucky, particularly for starting journeys or new ventures, likely due to its association with the crucifixion. But other days might have their own local traditions. Perhaps Tuesdays are bad for marriages in your village, or Thursdays are particularly auspicious for planting certain crops. Beyond individual days, certain periods of the year hold immense superstitious weight, often blending Christian holidays with much older pre-Christian traditions associated with the agricultural cycle and the changing seasons. Think of the period around midwinter, coinciding with Christmas. While celebrating the birth of Christ, many folk practices echo older solstice rituals. Bringing greenery like holly and ivy indoors might be seen not just as decoration, but as a way to shelter nature spirits during the harsh winter, ensuring their benevolence for the coming year. Burning a Yule log is both practical for warmth and symbolic, perhaps representing the endurance of light through darkness, with its ashes possibly kept for luck or protection throughout the year. The 12 days of Christmas might be seen as a particularly potent time when the veil between worlds is thin, spirits roam, and omens for the coming year are especially significant. Dreams had during this period might be carefully interpreted, and the weather on each of the 12 days might be thought to predict the weather for each corresponding month of the year ahead. Moving towards spring, the period around Easter, while focused on the resurrection, also incorporates older symbols of fertility and rebirth. Eggs, as we noted, are potent symbols. The timing of planting is crucial, often linked not just to weather, but to the phase of the moon and specific saints' days believed to influence growth. May Day, or Beltane in older traditions, is another powerful time. Lighting bonfires, the Beltane fires, might be practiced, perhaps for purification, protection of livestock, or encouraging fertility. Dancing around a maypole, decorated with ribbons and flowers, is a clear symbol of life and growth. However, May can also be considered an unlucky month for weddings in some traditions. Marry in May, rue the day. It's also a time when fairies are believed to be particularly active and powerful, requiring caution and protective measures like hanging rowan branches. Midsummer, around the summer solstice, is perhaps the peak of superstitious potency. Like midwinter, it's seen as a liminal time when the supernatural world is close. Bonfires are common again, perhaps to strengthen the sun, drive away evil spirits, or ensure a good harvest. Specific herbs gathered on Midsummer's Eve, like Saint John's wort, are believed to hold extraordinary magical power for healing or protection. Dreams on this night are considered prophetic. Divination rituals, especially for young women seeking to know their future husbands, might be practiced. It's a time of celebration, but also of heightened awareness of the unseen world. Harvest time brings its own set of rituals and beliefs, focused on thanksgiving, but also on ensuring the safe gathering and storage of the vital crops. The last sheaf of grain cut might be treated specially, perhaps woven into a corn dolly or kern baby, believed to house the spirit of the grain. This might be kept until the next planting season to ensure continuity and fertility. Feasting celebrates the harvest, but offerings might also be made, implicitly or explicitly, to the spirits of the land who granted the bounty. Throughout the year, these calendar customs provide structure, mark transitions, and offer ritualized ways to engage with the perceived forces governing luck, fertility, and protection, weaving superstition deeply into the very rhythm of life. Beyond passively interpreting omens or adhering to calendar customs, you and your contemporaries actively seek ways to glimpse the future or uncover hidden knowledge through various forms of divination. Life is uncertain, and any perceived insight into what lies ahead offers a precious, if often illusory, sense of preparedness or control. These practices range from simple household rituals to more complex methods, perhaps employed by specialists. One common area for divination is love and marriage, particularly for young, unmarried individuals. On specific nights deemed potent, like Midsummer's Eve or Halloween, All Hallows' Eve, various rituals might be performed. A young woman might peel an apple in one continuous strip and throw the peel over her shoulder, hoping it lands in the shape of her future husband's initial. Or she might gaze into a mirror in a darkened room, sometimes with a candle, hoping to see his face reflected beside hers, a potentially terrifying prospect if a skull or coffin appeared instead, signifying spinsterhood or early death. Another practice involves scattering hemp seeds while reciting a specific rhyme, then looking back over one's shoulder to supposedly see the future spouse gathering the seeds. Dreams, as mentioned, are considered significant portals to the future, or messages from the divine or supernatural. But interpreting them isn't always straightforward. You might rely on traditional interpretations passed down orally. Dreaming of snakes means enemies. Dreaming of flying means success. Dreaming of teeth falling out signifies loss or death. Certain individuals in the community might gain a reputation as skilled dream interpreters, their advice sought after particularly vivid or disturbing dreams. Keeping a record of dreams, perhaps mentally or through simple tallies, might be done to track patterns or recurring warnings. Scrying, the practice of gazing into a reflective surface to receive visions, is another form of divination. While crystal balls are a later, more specialized image, simpler forms exist. You might gaze into a bowl of water, perhaps with ink or oil dropped onto the surface, looking for shapes or images to form in the reflections or patterns. Polished stones, mirrors, used cautiously due to soul fragment beliefs, or even pools of still water outdoors could serve the same purpose. The visions received are often ambiguous, requiring interpretation based on personal concerns and prevailing beliefs. Sortilege, or casting lots, is used to make decisions or determine guilt. This could be as simple as drawing straws of different lengths, or marking stones or pieces of wood, and drawing one from a bag. The outcome is believed to be guided by divine will or fate. Sometimes books, particularly the Bible or lives of saints, might be used. The book is opened at random, and the first passage the finger falls upon is interpreted as guidance or prophecy related to the question asked, bibliomancy. Observing the behavior of fire or smoke can also be a form of divination, pyromancy. The way flames leap, the shapes seen in the embers, the direction smoke drifts, all might be scrutinized for meaning, especially during important rituals or when seeking answers to specific questions. Similarly, the shapes formed by molten lead or wax dropped into cold water might be interpreted. These divination practices, while diverse, share a common root: the deep-seated need to find meaning and predictability in a world that often feels random and hostile. They offer a way to engage directly with the forces believed to shape destiny, seeking answers, warnings, or reassurance. Whether peeling an apple, interpreting a dream, or casting lots, you are actively participating in the superstitious worldview, attempting to lift the veil, however slightly, on the uncertainties that dominate your existence. Let's shift our focus slightly to the collective manifestations of superstition, how these beliefs shape community actions, public rituals, and even the response to large-scale disasters. Individual fears and practices often coalesce into shared anxieties and communal attempts to ward off evil or secure good fortune. When misfortune strikes not just one household, but the entire village or region, the response is often a public display of piety mixed with deeply ingrained superstitious rites. Consider the outbreak of plague or another devastating epidemic. In a world without germ theory, the cause is sought elsewhere. Divine wrath for collective sin, malevolent astrological conjunctions, poisoned wells, perhaps blamed on outsiders or minority groups like Jews, or widespread witchcraft. The response is multifaceted. Public prayers, processions, and religious services intensify dramatically. People flock to churches, appealing for mercy and forgiveness. Vows might be made collectively, promising to build a chapel, undertake a pilgrimage, or perform acts of charity if the plague subsides. Alongside these official religious responses, folk practices flourish. We mentioned the need fire ritual, a communal effort to create pure fire to cleanse the community. Other public rituals might involve carrying specific relics through the streets, believing their holy power can drive away the disease. Boundaries might be marked with protective symbols or herbs, attempting to create a cordon of safety around the village. Scapegoating can become rampant. Fear and panic need an outlet, and individuals already viewed with suspicion, foreigners, hermits, midwives, or those considered unlucky, might face accusations of causing or spreading the plague through malice or witchcraft. This can lead to violence and further social breakdown precisely when cooperation is most needed. Famine, often caused by prolonged bad weather like droughts or floods, is another collective disaster interpreted through a superstitious lens. Is the weather a punishment for sin? Has a local witch cursed the fields? Have the land spirits been offended? Again, public prayers and processions are common. Rituals specifically aimed at influencing the weather might be performed, perhaps carrying saints' statues to rivers or fields, or engaging in specific forms of sympathetic magic intended to bring rain or sun. Offerings might be made at sacred sites, holy wells, ancient trees, or specific shrines, hoping to appease whatever power is believed to control the elements. Desperation can lead to extreme measures, perhaps reviving half-forgotten pagan rites in the hope that older gods might listen where the Christian God seems deaf. Even unusual natural events on a large scale trigger communal superstitious responses. The appearance of a comet, as we noted, causes widespread panic, interpreted as a harbinger of war, plague, or the death of kings. People might engage in collective fasting and prayer, scrutinizing the comet's appearance for further clues about the specific disaster it foretells. Earthquakes, floods, or unusually severe storms are likewise seen as signs of divine displeasure or cosmic imbalance, prompting public acts of penance and appeals for protection. These collective responses demonstrate how deeply superstition is woven into the social fabric, shaping not just individual lives, but the community's shared understanding of cause and effect, disaster and deliverance. The world is a stage for divine and demonic forces, and human communities must constantly perform the correct rituals and maintain the right relationship with these powers to ensure their collective survival. Let's delve into the specific entities believed to populate the unseen world around you, figures that loom large in folklore and superstition, influencing behavior and explaining misfortune. Beyond the general fear of spirits or demons, your world is likely inhabited by a host of more specific beings, each with their own characteristics, domains, and potential dangers. Fairies, or the good folk, as they are often cautiously called, using a euphemism to avoid offending them, are a prime example. They are not the tiny winged sprites of later romanticism. They are often powerful, capricious, and potentially dangerous beings, believed to live in parallel to the human world, often residing in ancient mounds, specific woods, or near water sources. You treat known fairy locations with immense respect and caution. Disturbing a fairy mound or cutting down a tree considered sacred to them could invite terrible retribution, illness, livestock death, or even abduction. Offerings might be left out for them, particularly milk or bread, not necessarily out of affection, but as appeasement, a way to keep them benevolent, or at least neutral. Iron, as we know, is considered a powerful repellent against fairies, and carrying a piece of iron or hanging it over doorways offers some measure of protection. Church bells are also thought to drive them away, linking Christian power with defense against these older entities. The greatest fear associated with fairies is often the abduction of humans, particularly infants. The belief in changelings, sickly, ill-tempered fairy babies swapped for healthy human ones, is widespread and terrifying. A baby that fails to thrive, cries incessantly, or seems somehow unnatural might be suspected of being a changeling. Horrific folk rituals, sometimes involving exposing the suspected changeling to fire or iron, were believed to force the fairies to return the human child, though such practices often resulted in tragedy for the unfortunate infant. This belief reflects the anxieties surrounding infant mortality and unexplained childhood illnesses, projecting them onto the actions of malevolent supernatural beings. Besides fairies, there are countless other local spirits and bogies tied to specific places or phenomena. Will-o'-the-wisps, those strange lights flickering over marshes, are often personified as mischievous spirits leading travellers astray. Water spirits, like Jenny Greenteeth or the Grindylow, are feared near ponds and rivers, serving as cautionary figures to keep children away from dangerous water. Household spirits might also exist in belief, some potentially helpful if appeased, like brownies or hobs, who might perform chores at night if left offerings. Others mischievous or troublesome, like boggarts, who might cause things to go missing or create disturbances. Demons and the devil himself are, of course, central figures in the Christian worldview, blamed for temptation, sin, and major misfortunes. But in folk belief, their influence often blends with older ideas about hostile spirits. They might be thought to directly cause storms, plagues, or personal afflictions. Exorcism rituals, performed by priests, are the official defense, but everyday protection involves prayer, holy water, crucifixes, and avoiding places or situations considered spiritually dangerous, like crossroads at midnight, or dabbling in forbidden magic. Ghosts, the spirits of the dead, are another source of fear. Not all spirits of the deceased are feared, but those who died violently, unjustly, or without proper burial rites are believed likely to return and haunt the living. A ghost might be blamed for strange noises in a house, unexplained cold spots, or recurring nightmares. Rituals might be performed to appease the ghost or help it find peace, sometimes involving reburying remains correctly or fulfilling an obligation left unmet by the deceased. Understanding this populated spirit world is crucial for navigating daily life, as these entities are seen as active participants in the world, capable of influencing events and requiring constant vigilance, appeasement, or defense. How does this constant immersion in a world governed by superstition affect your mental state, your very way of thinking? It fosters a mindset where coincidence is rarely accepted as mere chance. If two unusual events happen close together, a connection is sought. If you have a bad thought about someone and they subsequently fall ill, you might secretly fear your own thoughts hold malevolent power. This pattern seeking, while a natural human tendency, is amplified to an extreme degree, finding significance in the mundane and attributing agency to the inanimate. It also creates a strong bias towards confirming existing beliefs. When a ritual appears to work, perhaps you perform a charm for rain, and it rains the next day. It reinforces faith in the charm. When it doesn't work, explanations are readily available. The ritual wasn't performed correctly, a counter-influence was stronger, or it simply wasn't God's will. Failures rarely challenge the underlying belief system. Instead, they are often interpreted within it. This confirmation bias makes the web of superstition incredibly resilient to doubt or contradictory evidence. Furthermore, living with constant low-level anxiety about unseen forces and potential misfortune takes a psychological toll. It can lead to obsessive behaviors, constantly checking charms, repeating protective phrases, meticulously avoiding anything deemed unlucky. It can fuel social anxieties, making interactions fraught with the fear of giving or receiving ill fortune or the evil eye. It can contribute to a sense of fatalism, where individuals feel powerless against predetermined luck or divine judgment, potentially discouraging proactive efforts to improve their situation through practical means alone. There's also the burden of memory required. You need to remember countless rules. Which days are lucky, which herbs are protective, which gestures ward off evil, the specific interpretations of dozens of omens, the correct procedures for countless minor rituals. This complex body of unwritten knowledge must be constantly accessed and applied. Forgetting a crucial detail, failing to say the right blessing over food, or using the wrong type of wood for a charm could have dire consequences, adding another layer of mental pressure. Imagination plays a powerful role. In a world lit mostly by firelight after dark, shadows easily become menacing figures. Strange noises are readily interpreted as spirits or demons. The lack of scientific explanations for natural phenomena leaves ample room for imaginative, often terrifying, interpretations. This heightened imagination, fueled by fear and folklore, populates the world with dangers that are, from our perspective, unreal, but for you, are entirely tangible threats, demanding constant vigilance. Yet, paradoxically, superstition might also offer some psychological comfort. In the face of overwhelming uncertainty, disease, and hardship, having a ritual to perform, an omen to interpret, or a charm to cling to provides a sense of agency, however illusory. It offers explanations for suffering, framing it not as random chaos, but as part of a cosmic struggle or a system of divine justice and supernatural influence. Performing the correct rituals provides a feeling of doing something in situations where practical solutions are limited or non-existent. It imposes a kind of order onto a chaotic world, albeit an order governed by fear and irrationality. It allows communities to channel collective anxiety into shared rituals, reinforcing social bonds even as it sometimes fosters suspicion. This complex interplay of anxiety, confirmation bias, imaginative fear, and the desperate need for explanation and control lies at the very heart of why superstition held such a powerful grip on the medieval mind. How did the official church, the dominant religious and often political power of the era, interact with this deeply rooted system of folk superstition? The relationship was complex, often contradictory, involving attempts at suppression, reluctant tolerance, and sometimes even absorption and reinterpretation of older beliefs. The church officially condemned practices it deemed pagan or magical, divination, spellcasting, worship of spirits or nature entities, and reliance on charms outside of approved religious sacramentals. Priests would preach against such practices, warning of demonic influence and the dangers of straying from true Christian faith. Trials by ordeal, while often presided over by clergy as we saw, were formally condemned by the church hierarchy, notably by the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215, which decreed priests should no longer participate in them. This official disapproval contributed to the gradual decline of ordeals as judicial proof, though the underlying belief in divine intervention in human affairs remained strong, and trial by combat persisted longer in various forms. Similarly, belief in witchcraft was complex. While the church acknowledged the existence of demons and the devil's power to tempt, the exact nature and extent of witches' supposed abilities, particularly the idea of flight or pacts with the devil, were debated among theologians, and not always fully endorsed in the earlier medieval period as they would be later. However, eradicating centuries, even millennia, of ingrained folk belief was an impossible task. The church often adopted a strategy of co-option and reinterpretation. Older sacred sites, springs, groves, wells, might have churches or chapels built nearby or even directly upon them. Local pagan deities or spirits might be subtly transformed into Christian saints, their feast days and attributes sometimes echoing older traditions. For example, St. Bridget of Ireland shares many attributes and feast days with the Celtic goddess Brigid. This process allowed people to continue venerating familiar holy places and figures, but now framed within a Christian context. Similarly, many practices involving charms or amulets were Christianized. Instead of carrying a pagan charm, you would be encouraged to wear a religious medal, a crucifix, or carry a fragment of a relic. Holy water, blessed salt, and consecrated candles took on protective functions similar to older folk charms, but now sanctioned by the church. Blessings performed by priests, blessing homes, fields, livestock, fishing boats, fulfilled a similar psychological need as older protective rites, offering a sense of security against unseen dangers, but channeled through approved religious figures and rituals. Praying to specific saints for specific needs, e.g., St. Anthony for lost items, St. Roch for plague victims, mirrored the older practice of appealing to specialized deities or spirits for particular problems. This syncretism, this blending of official doctrine and folk belief, was often the reality on the ground. Your local priest might preach against superstition on Sunday, but might still participate in blessing the fields in a way that felt very much like an ancient fertility rite, or turn a blind eye to parishioners wearing folk charms alongside their crucifixes. He understood, perhaps, the deep psychological needs these practices fulfilled for his flock living in a precarious world. The line between accepted religious piety, like venerating relics or praying intensely to saints, and condemned superstition, like using a divination spell or fearing fairies, could be incredibly blurry, often depending on the specific context, the local priest's attitude, and the prevailing community norms. You learn to navigate this complex religious landscape, participating in church rituals, while often continuing the older, deeply ingrained practices passed down through your family and community, seeing them not necessarily as contradictory, but as complementary layers of protection and meaning in a world saturated with perceived supernatural forces. The lack of widespread literacy profoundly shapes how superstitious beliefs are transmitted and maintained. In a world where most people cannot read or write, knowledge, including the complex rules of superstition, folklore, remedies, and rituals, relies almost entirely on oral tradition, memory, and visual symbols. This reliance on spoken word and memory makes beliefs both incredibly persistent and subtly fluid, prone to variation and misinterpretation over time and distance. Imagine learning about the world primarily through stories told around the hearth, songs sung in the fields or taverns, sermons heard in church, often in Latin, which you might not fully understand, relying on the priest's explanation and visual aids like paintings or stained glass, and observing the actions of your elders. There are no books to consult for definitive answers, no encyclopedias of omens. Knowledge is embodied in people and practices. You learn the meaning of a magpie sighting, not from a text, but because your mother always muttered, "one for sorrow," or crossed herself when seeing a lone bird. You learn the correct way to perform a protective ritual before a journey by watching your father do it countless times. This oral transmission makes beliefs deeply ingrained but also subject to change. Stories evolve in the telling. Details might be forgotten, embellished, or conflated. A ritual practiced in one village might have subtle but significant differences from the version known in the next valley. The meaning attributed to a specific omen might shift based on recent events or local interpretations. This fluidity doesn't necessarily weaken the belief system. It allows it to adapt and absorb new elements, but it also means there's rarely a single, universally agreed upon, correct version of any given superstition, outside of perhaps core religious doctrines. Literacy, where it exists, is often concentrated in the hands of the clergy, nobility, or perhaps some merchants. Written texts, Bibles, prayer books, chronicles, legal documents hold immense authority, partly because they are rare and inaccessible to most. However, even written texts could incorporate or reflect superstitious beliefs. Herbals might mix practical botanical knowledge with magical properties attributed to plants. Bestiaries, describing animals real and imagined, often included moralizing interpretations and folklore about the creature's habits and symbolism. Even chronicles written by monks might record comets, strange weather, or monstrous births as divine portents or signs of the times. reflecting the prevailing worldview. For you, the common person, the inability to read means you rely on intermediaries to access written knowledge, primarily the clergy. The priest reads the scriptures, interprets doctrine, and conveys the official teachings of the church. This gives the church enormous power in shaping understanding, but as we've seen, it doesn't eliminate the parallel stream of folk belief passed down orally. Visual information becomes incredibly important. Church paintings, sculptures, and stained glass windows depicting biblical scenes, lives of saints, or allegorical struggles between virtues and vices serve as powerful teaching tools, reinforcing religious narratives and associated beliefs for an illiterate populace. Similarly, symbols carved onto buildings, tools, or gravestones communicate meaning without words. The lack of widespread literacy also contributes to the fear of the unknown and reliance on tradition. Without easy access to diverse sources of information or alternative explanations, the traditional law of the community becomes the primary framework for understanding the world. Challenging these beliefs is difficult when there are few accessible counter-arguments or ways to independently verify information. Oral tradition, backed by community consensus and the perceived evidence of fulfilled omens or successful rituals, holds sway, making the superstitious worldview not just a set of beliefs, but the very fabric of perceived reality, passed down faithfully, if sometimes imperfectly, from one generation to the next. Let's consider the role of fear in maintaining this superstitious worldview. Fear is perhaps the most potent fuel for superstition. Fear of the unknown, fear of death, fear of illness, fear of starvation, fear of violence, fear of divine wrath, fear of malevolent spirits. In a world where life is precarious and explanations are scarce, fear readily attaches itself to perceived threats, and superstition offers rituals and beliefs that seem to provide a way to manage or mitigate that fear. Imagine the constant, low-level fear associated with illness. With limited medical understanding, any fever, rash, or persistent cough could be fatal. Attributing the illness to witchcraft or a broken taboo provides an explanation, however terrifying. Performing a healing ritual or seeking a specific charm offers a course of action, a way to fight back against the perceived cause, which can be psychologically more comforting than simply waiting passively for the illness to run its course or accepting it as random misfortune. The ritual might not work, but the act of performing it provides a temporary sense of control or hope in a frightening situation. Fear of the dead is another powerful motivator. The belief that improperly buried or wronged spirits can return to haunt the living leads to meticulous observance of funeral rites and mourning customs. Covering mirrors, opening windows, holding vigils. These actions are driven by the fear of the ghost lingering or causing harm. Similarly, burying suicides or criminals at crossroads reflects a fear of their unquiet spirits and an attempt to contain or confuse them through ritual means. Fear of nature's power, storms, floods, droughts, also fuels superstitious practices. When your livelihood depends entirely on the weather and the harvest, a prolonged drought isn't just an inconvenience, it's a potential death sentence. The fear drives communities to perform rain-making rituals, processions, or offerings, desperately seeking to influence the forces that control their survival. Attributing bad weather to divine anger or offended spirits provides a framework for understanding and potentially rectifying the situation through acts of penance or appeasement. Fear of social conflict and hidden enemies manifests in the belief in curses and the evil eye. In small, close-knit communities where tensions and jealousies inevitably arise, the fear that someone might secretly wish you harm or use magic against you is ever present. This leads to cautious social interactions, the use of protective charms, and sometimes scapegoating when misfortune occurs. The fear of being accused yourself also enforces conformity and adherence to community norms and beliefs. Even the fear of childbirth, a dangerous process for both mother and infant, is interwoven with superstition. Rituals to protect the mother and child, beliefs about lucky or unlucky times for birth, and the terror of changelings all stem from the profound fear surrounding this vulnerable period. charms and prayers offer a shield against the perceived supernatural dangers that compound the physical risks. Superstition, then, can be seen as a complex defense mechanism against overwhelming fear. It provides names for nameless dreads, fairies, demons, witches, explanations for inexplicable suffering, curses, divine punishment, omens, and actions to take when feeling powerless, rituals, charms, prayers. While it often creates its own anxieties, the fear of breaking a taboo, the stress of constant vigilance, it also offers a structured way to confront and attempt to manage the fundamental fears inherent in a precarious existence. It channels fear into specific beliefs and practices, making the terrifying unknown seem, perhaps, slightly more navigable, even if the map is drawn with the ink of irrationality and dread. Let's consider the physical objects that become focal points for superstitious belief. Not just personal charms, but items within the home or community that acquire a reputation for luck or misfortune. An old piece of furniture, perhaps inherited, might be considered lucky if the family has prospered since acquiring it. Conversely, an object associated with a past tragedy, a fire, a death, a period of hardship, might be viewed with suspicion or fear, perhaps even disposed of to remove its negative influence. Mirrors, as we've discussed, are particularly potent due to the belief they hold soul fragments. But other household items can accrue significance. A particular cooking pot that always seems to produce good results might be treated with special care, while one associated with burnt meals or illness might be relegated to lesser tasks or discarded. A spinning wheel that belonged to a particularly skilled or lucky spinner might be prized, while one owned by someone who suffered misfortune might be unwanted. Even the structure of the house itself can be subject to superstition. We mentioned foundation rituals and doorway charms, but specific features might gain meaning. A beam made from a certain type of wood might be considered protective. A hearthstone that has been in the family for generations might be seen as embodying the spirit or luck of the household. Renovations or changes to the house might be undertaken cautiously, perhaps only at auspicious times, for fear of disturbing the house's luck or resident spirits. In the wider community, certain public objects or structures can become loci of belief. The village well, essential for life, is often protected by blessings and rituals. Its water might be considered holy or healing. Conversely, if the well runs dry or the water becomes tainted, supernatural causes might be suspected. The church building itself is obviously a sacred space, but specific parts of it, a particular altar, a saint's statue, a specific tomb, might gain a reputation for granting prayers or performing miracles, becoming focal points for pilgrimage or personal devotion beyond the standard services. The village stocks or pillory, instruments of punishment and public shame, might acquire a negative aura. People might avoid touching them or even walking too close, perhaps fearing contamination by the bad luck or sin of those punished there. The blacksmith's forge, with its fire and metalworking, is often seen as a place of power, both respected and slightly feared. Tools made by a particular blacksmith might be considered luckier or more potent than others. Graveyards are, naturally, places saturated with superstition. While consecrated ground offers protection, individual graves might be viewed differently. The grave of a holy person or saint might be a site of pilgrimage and prayer. And so, we draw the heavy, somewhat moth-eaten curtain on this exploration of a world ruled, and often ruined, by superstition. We've walked the muddy tracks beside you, felt the chill of unseen eyes, scanned the skies for omens, and clutched protective charms against the encroaching darkness. We've seen how belief in unseen forces permeated every aspect of existence, from the moment of waking to the anxieties of sleep, from the planting of crops to the judgment of souls, from the intimacy of the home to the vastness of the cosmos. It was a world where reality felt thin, porous, easily punctured by influences from beyond the veil. Misfortune was rarely just misfortune. It was a sign, a punishment, a curse. Good luck was not mere chance, but favor hard-won through ritual or granted by capricious powers. The landscape itself was alive with meaning. Every bird, stone, and shadow, potentially carrying a message. Human interactions were fraught with the peril of the evil eye or the carelessly uttered curse. Survival depended not just on resilience and hard work, but on the constant, exhausting effort of navigating this invisible web of rules, appeasing spirits, interpreting signs, and performing the myriad rituals believed necessary to keep disaster at bay. It's easy, from our brightly lit, scientifically informed vantage point, to dismiss these beliefs as mere ignorance or irrationality. And certainly, they often led to fear, injustice, and wasted effort. The scapegoating of innocence, the terror induced by comets or eclipses, the reliance on painful ordeals for justice, the anxiety surrounding every minor deviation from the norm. These were heavy burdens indeed. Life was demonstrably harder, shorter, and more precarious, and superstition often added a thick layer of psychological distress to the already considerable physical hardships. Yet perhaps we can also glimpse why these beliefs held such power, why they persisted for so long. In a world offering few other explanations for suffering and uncertainty, superstition provided a framework, however flawed. It offered answers, named fears, and prescribed actions. It gave people a sense of agency, a feeling that they could do something, perform a ritual, carry a charm, say a prayer, to influence their fate, even if that influence was illusory. It fostered community through shared rituals and beliefs, binding people together against perceived common threats, even while sometimes turning them against each other in suspicion. Reflecting on this world, perhaps it fosters a certain gratitude for the one we inhabit now. Not because our world is free from fear or irrationality, far from it, but because the specific, pervasive, moment-to-moment dread of offending spirits, misinterpreting omens, or falling victim to a neighbour's curse is largely absent from most of our daily lives. We have different anxieties, different uncertainties, but the fundamental texture of reality feels different, less charged with immediate supernatural peril. We can spill salt without fearing the devil at our shoulder, see a black cat without anticipating disaster, and face illness with the hope of rational medicine rather than relying solely on charms against witchcraft. As you continue to drift now, letting the echoes of these ancient fears fade into the quiet darkness, perhaps hold on to that sense of contrast. Appreciate the relative silence of a world less clamorous with omens, less demanding in its ritual observances. Let the knowledge that you don't need to interpret the wind's direction or count magpies to ensure your safety deepen your relaxation. Thank you for joining us once again on Boring History for Sleep. If you found this slow drift through the anxieties of the past somewhat soothing, or perhaps just oddly fascinating, do consider subscribing or leaving a like. It helps others discover this quiet space where history whispers you towards slumber. We hope these tales of superstition haven't given you cause for unease, but rather have provided a backdrop for your own peaceful rest. Until next time, sleep well, and may your dreams be free of ill portents.